Welcome. This is the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is where you'll learn strategies to help you achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host, Rod Khleif, has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, and he brings experts in all aspects of real estate investment and management onto the show. Now, here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Couple of quick things. We are now over 1.5 million downloads for this podcast, and I'm just blown away that we've literally been number one in the real estate section, the business section, and the education sections of iTunes for almost a year. It just blows me away. I just want to thank you guys for that, and thank you for the awesome emails I get and the handwritten thank you notes I get from you guys. I mean, it really means the world to me. Now, I've been blessed to have spoken with or communicated with almost 1,000 of you. And I'll tell you, adding value to you has honestly caused me to evaluate and shift my own mission and purpose in life. You know, many of you over the last year have asked me for help with either coaching or mentoring, or suggested I create something, you know, course or training materials. And I absolutely never started this podcast with the intent to do that. But I've gotten so much pleasure out of these conversations and the gratitude I get from those of you when you take action that I finally decided to go ahead and do it. And in a few weeks, I'm launching an incredible course and coaching program. And my goal is to help you crush it in your lives and in this exciting business and build your own lifetime cash flow. So if you want to get more information on that, my course and coaching, when it becomes available, text the word CRUSH, C-R-U-S-H, to 41411. And another thing, my book is still free. My free book is still free, 200-page book. If you haven't gotten it, and you're serious about this business, you're making a mistake. Get your free copy. Text the word ROD to 41411 or go to rodkhleif.com, Khleif.com, and get it. Now, lastly, I just have a favor. If you're getting value from this podcast, I'd be very grateful if you literally took 2 minutes. That's all it takes. Go to iTunes and leave me a 5-star rating and review. It makes a huge difference in our ranking and our ability to get great people for me to interview. So thank you in advance if you do that for me. All right, let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And I know you're going to get a ton of value from the fascinating gentleman that we're interviewing today. He's not just a very successful real estate investor. He owns over 700 multifamily units and 150,000 square feet of commercial retail space, but he's also the second largest Keller Williams franchisee. His offices in California have over 3,000 realtors, and they do over $7 billion worth of real estate a year. So he's got the 22nd largest real estate brokerage in the United States. Very impressive. He's also the regional director for Keller Williams in Southern California and oversees 37 offices with over 10,000 realtors. And he just published an awesome book called Wealth Can't Wait, which we're going to dig into. Paul, thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
and I've had a chance to see you, see your podcast, several episodes, and also some of the videos that they do. So very, very impressed and grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you and also to the folks that listen to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun. I mean, we just went over 1.5 million downloads. It's been really well received, and it's and I think it's because people know I love this. I'm really enjoying this and adding value. Do you mind expanding on your bio a little bit? Just talking about, you know, your foray into real estate, how you got started maybe? Because, you know, my listeners are aspiring or, you know, existing multifamily owners, and, you know, talk about how you got started.
Sure. Well, to begin with, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the child of a dad who went through the Great Depression, didn't go to college. And so he was an entrepreneur for sure, but really super hardworking and working, you know, 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week. And his vision for his kids was to use education to, you know, get to climb social status or economic status. So of 2 brothers and 2 sisters, we've got 3 doctors. I went to law school. Yeah, I went to law school, and much like what I read about and saw with you, you know, it's not a matter of intelligence, but if you don't have the ability to sit still, school can be a massive challenge. Now, I was able to do it anyway, but that's through, you know, massive force more than anything else. I had the brains to do it, but I couldn't sit still. And it was later in life that I realized that the inability to sit still really is the ability to get stuff done.
It's an asset. It's an asset. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I followed the educational path that really was the family thing. And then I found myself in a major, sort of the gold standard is a, major New York law firm where I was an associate, and it's paper pushing. And one of the things that I found was no matter how much we earn, it doesn't matter. Whatever your hourly rate is, some of the highest paid lawyers right now are making $1,000 or $1,200 an hour. The thing that gets me with that is
trying for money.
Yes, when they're playing golf, they're not getting paid. So I've always had this thing with passive income, and I also my dad bought some multifamily stuff, and I saw that as a real stable way to build wealth over time. And the first thing I did was, it was before I completed my law degree, so before I really had that career, was buy a duplex.
No kidding.
And I did that together with a friend in Pittsburgh, and we've built since then together, mostly together, this large real estate portfolio.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Pittsburgh's a great market. From what I understand, it didn't suffer like Florida did through a lot of the ups and downs. Denver was kind of similar. It doesn't get impacted as much. At least that's what I've heard. I got crushed here in Florida, and you guys in California and Vegas, and they all got crushed in 2008. But
one of the funny things that they said about that was, we didn't have a hangover because we weren't invited to the party.
Well, that's a party it was okay you missed, let me tell you. So correct me if I'm wrong, you've got a pretty good pedigree educationally as well. I think you went to some pretty impressive schools. I don't have them here in front of me, but where'd you study? Yes, I did an undergrad at University of Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and then I went, graduated top of my class. I went to University of Oxford with a scholarship to study management, and then Cornell Law School. Very cool. Very cool. So, wow. So that JD is just sitting on a shelf right now. Yeah. You're just, and that's okay. It sounds like you're doing fine in your own right. So, I know that Keller Williams is an awesome real estate franchise. I've got a great friend that's got a franchise up in Canada. So you wrote a book.
Yes.
So what prompted that? Where'd that come from?
Well, as you mentioned, with me leading this big sales team, and then also you tie that together with my background not being in sales. So I was one of the few Keller Williams owners that didn't come from the field, from the sales force. So sure, I'm a good educator, so I could learn the materials and teach the materials, but it didn't feel as authentic, for example, as having one of our top producers teach a great listing presentation or how to get the client. So in order to add value, I looked around and I really saw that sales is a very interesting thing. And that's, you implement these systems and you work harder on your 20% and you drive your income up. And then what I found out was, as these people were driving their income up, it wasn't necessarily, and often not the case, driving their wealth. So my contribution to my sales force was to put together a curriculum on building wealth. That's what I felt like, okay, well, this is what's missing. A lot of real estate companies don't teach much of anything. And then Keller Williams came along and said, hey, we're an education company. They have all these great programs, but it's all about, building your sales business, which I totally understand. And so what do you do once you have the sales business? And that is build wealth. So
like any business or any sales related profession, the real estate business is really a good example of this. Unless you're using that income and buying assets that produce cash flow, every January 1st you go back to work. And those of my listeners that are listening that have a full-time job, they're in that job until they build passive income that can offset that or replace that job. And it doesn't matter what the job is, whether it's a commissioned sales job like your people, or if it's a 9-to-5 rat race sort of a job. The key here is taking that money and building wealth and building passive income, either by investing in a business or investing in stock market if you want to risk that, or in cash flowing real estate, be it multifamily, retail, office, whatever it is. Well, let's talk about your book. In your book, you talk about some wealth traps. And they're perfect because it's a perfect segue from what we were just talking about. So the first one that I think there's like 7 or 8 of them. And the first one that you list is staying in a comfortable job.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what we're just talking about. Can you expand on that?
Sure. And one of the things that I'll say to you, because I think you and I can tell already we speak the same language. So just what you were saying before about, January 1st, you start over again. And really, I think as a realtor, a lot of times, as soon as your deal is done, you start over again.
Right.
And when I build wealth and I invest in real estate, it's one of the reasons why I don't like flipping properties.
Right.
And that's why I love talking to your folks and talking to the multifamily people. And there's nothing wrong with flipping property. If you know how to do it, you have got
it's a great way to make the money
yes.
to invest in income producing assets, whatever
yes.
they are, be it
yes.
multifamily, whatever. But you've got to make the money. But it's so painful, especially when you go back and you look at those properties that you flipped and you think to yourself, oh my God, if I'd have just hung on to them, or, if they made sense for that. But it's a job. Anyway, I interrupted. Please continue.
Yeah, no. And I was just saying, one of the things that I do on the multifamily side is I spend on any particular deal, I'll spend the bulk of the time in the acquisition and then what I call sort of the repositioning. And then I put that, to use your terminology, I put that on the shelf. So if I find an amazing deal and it's fantastic and I've got a great plan to reposition it, after I'm done with that, I put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then that's an asset that grows and grows and grows over time. And as I watch my net worth grow over time, and we see it in sort of waves. The markets will change, and for a while it'll be flat, and then all of a sudden it'll spike up, and we get to do that. And when you flip a property, when you find I get so excited. I found a fabulous property. I've got this great plan to change it. And if I did all that and then sold it and took the money, now I'm back to zero again. Yeah. So that's why I feel like flipping houses is just like selling real estate, and it's just like, in a way, to get back to the question that you asked me, was staying in a comfortable job. And staying in a comfortable job is doing what you know, which isn't a bad thing, but just being lulled into working for that paycheck. And different people handle this differently. In fact, my co-author and I differ a little bit on it. And I have to say, and this is maybe a different perspective, I'd love to share it, I don't burn the boats. So there's a saying like, okay, so when you move from one thing to another, one of the ways you get from point A to point B is you go all in and you burn the boats. So burn the boats meaning there's no going back. And I didn't do that. So what I did was I stayed in the comfortable job, but I didn't fall into that wealth trap. I stayed in the comfortable job and I put aside enough money and also used other people's money in syndication to buy real estate until that blossomed enough to where I felt comfortable enough to leave my comfortable job. And,
right.
and for me, comfortable job's a little bit of a misnomer anyway, because I'm not comfortable, where I have to go in and somebody says, here's what you got to do. And then I got to get a performance review. I don't want anybody giving me a performance review. I mean, it still occurs in my life, but that's the direction to move is to where you really own your own time.
Yeah, your performance review is how well your property does, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And, I interviewed Grant Cardone, he's a fantastic sales expert, and he's got this saying that I have on my wall here, actually, is comfort kills. And it really does. And it ties right into your staying in a comfortable job. And some people, that's all they'll ever do. And if they're happy, God bless them. But if you want more, you want to get out of the rat race, you want to build wealth, you've got to get uncomfortable. Tony Robbins says the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of discomfort you can live with. You've got to get uncomfortable. So I love that one. All right, your next one is avoiding risk in your book.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Well, I wonder, Rod, if this is a good spot for me to also tell you about the 3 rules that I use to invest in real estate.
Absolutely. Bring it.
Okay. Awesome. Because in large part, when I talk to folks, I love to talk about this mindset stuff, but I also want to give you actionable items.
No, fantastic. And that's why my listeners, like the podcast, because we get great guests like you that can talk about how they actually did it. So please do that.
Sure. So in 25 years, I have invested in real estate, and that's certainly through some up cycles and down cycles, including the last really big one. Right. And I've never lost $1 on a real estate deal. And I've done that. And people find that very impressive. Like, wow, that's impressive. And as soon as I tell you the 3 disciplines, you'll be like, oh, of course, if you do it that way, you'll never lose money. And yet people don't do it. And that's how they lose money. So I'm going to share them with you. And the 3 are, number 1 is I only buy where I know. Okay. And so my entire real estate portfolio is based entirely in Pittsburgh and Los Angeles. It's where I used to live and where I now live. Now, lots of people make lots of money buying in other places other than where they know. And we could talk about how to do that, but that's how I do it. So that's one discipline.
Okay.
Another discipline is cash flow. So the asset must cash flow. And I will deviate from the asset cash flowing in one important way. And that is if I've got a very simple plan that's easily executable in a short period of time that will allow the property to cash flow. So I could buy something that has a little bit of a negative cash flow or a really low cash flow, but I know I'm buying into the 3rd rule. And the 3rd rule is add value.
Those are 3 very, very good rules. So you only buy an asset. You're not going to buy an asset that's performing fantastically that hasn't got any upside. You want something you can add value to.
Absolutely.
I feel exactly the same way. And you talking about cash flow. I wrote a book as well, and the subtitle is The New Rules of Real Estate Investing. The new rules being forget value, focus on cash flow.
Yes.
And, it's a little painful for me because I have lost money, big money,
yes,
in real estate. And your rules are fantastic. And I just sent out a white paper recently about the 4 markets you should consider if you're buying. And the first 2 are your backyard.
Yes.
Number 1. Number 2, somewhere you grew up or know well. Number 3 is somewhere you have boots on the ground. And 4 is maybe somewhere you'd like to retire. But certainly your rule is much safer. If you know the area, then, you're going to know what the pitfalls are. You're going to know, the crime statistics. You're going to know what's happening in the economy, all these things that you could discover and learn, but it's not the same as knowing, having been there, lived there, grew up there. Love it. Love it.
If I could mention also just getting a tiny bit deeper into the add value thing.
Sure.
Just to lay it out, and I'll be quick because I assume your listeners are pretty sophisticated, but what I do, my version of adding value, and first of all, it addresses the risk avoidance thing, because what I believe is when you buy value, you're actually buying a micro market inside of that property. So when you have upside built in, no matter what the market does, you still can harvest that upside. And so I'll tell you specifically what that looks like for me. And that is, it's a very old real estate adage, and that's just you buy the worst house in the best neighborhood.
Sure.
So do you actually, I live in LA, does that mean you actually have to run out and try and find the worst house in Beverly Hills? No, you don't. But a gentrifying neighborhood is also a way to do it. And I have a rule of thumb on the gentrifying neighborhood.
Oh, I want to hear that because we talk about that on the show all the time. I talk about these areas in Denver that I could have bought whole blocks for $20,000 a piece that are now $400,000 or $500,000 a piece. That's how crazy it's gone there. So please, I really want to hear this.
Okay. So, and one of those things, I want to make sure we don't fall into the trap of like the Bitcoin thing. Hey, somebody was telling me about Bitcoin and it was, $300 and now it's 3,000. Well, the reason why I didn't buy at 300, I was afraid it was going to go to, 30.
Right.
So that's why I didn't buy, and when I look at markets where, I could have bought a house for $40,000 and now it's 400. Well, I didn't buy that house because at the time I had no real idea whether it was going to go to 80 or to 20. So what I do with a gentrifying neighborhood is I wait until it's about 25% gentrified.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means to the purchaser, you put yourself in the purchaser's shoes, is it feels like to many people like, oh, I've already missed the boat. Like I could have bought that house for $200,000 and it's already $290,000, which is insane. Okay. But I'm looking around and I say, okay,
It's going to go to 5.
yeah, there's a super cool restaurant going in, like there, and when I bought my own house in Santa Monica, and by the way, this is perfect again for addressing risk avoidance. I bought my house at the precise worst moment in time. I bought it right before the market tanked.
Wow.
But because I was practicing the same things for investment in my own home, I bought a shack in Santa Monica that was sitting at the very apex of a hill that had a full-on ocean view. Very unique. I paid $2.2 million for it. Within 6 months, it was worth 1.6. So if I have to sell that, I'm crushed. Okay. Right. But because it's the worst house in the best neighborhood, and because literally 25%, maybe a little less, 20%. So 1 out of every 5 houses on my block was, getting totally tricked out. I knew it was going in the right direction. Now the downturn in the market put the brakes on all of that. And some of the houses that were mid-construction, stopped and foreclosed. And there was, sad to say, there was a suicide, and it's just like this whole disaster. But I had the cash flow to sustain the house. So that's the second rule. I also did not count on a bank loan to improve it. So when I did the analysis, I said, okay, well, I'm going to put down a nice chunk of money. I put down 40%, and I had the cash on the sidelines to improve it. Now I have to say, again, putting yourself in my shoes, I ran around to a bunch of realtors. I've got a lot of realtor friends. I'm like, am I crazy to put cash into this thing that just lost all this value? And they all said, well, you're going to live there, right? And I said, yes. They said, you'll be fine. Right. Now the investor's analogy to that would be, well, your intention is to hold this. So if your intention is to hold it, you buy a value at...
Then value doesn't matter, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
If you buy, or the market doesn't matter. So you buy a value add property, and if you've got 30, 40% upside built into it, and in the market, generally a market does, even a terrible market doesn't correct more than about 20%. So if you've got 20, 30% inside that building, the market tanks the day after you buy it, you can still afford to harvest that out, and you're fine. And then what I ended up with in the downturn in the market, and people, you read all the headlines, and people knew I was in real estate, like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, of course I'm okay. Why wouldn't I be okay? The majority of my assets are entry-level apartments into the best neighborhoods in Los Angeles and in Pittsburgh. Okay. And so it's the sweet spot somewhere between 20%. And then once you get 50, 60, 70%.
In a gentrifying neighborhood.
Yeah, in a gentrifying neighborhood.
Right.
Maybe once you get 70%, now, you just look at the block and you say, okay, well, 1 out of every 5 is getting, totally tricked out. Now's the time to buy. The prices will have already started to increase, but that's good. Because if you go when you're the first guy gentrifying, it could take 10 years to turn.
Or not turn. Yeah. Right. And when you're looking at one of these neighborhoods, you're going to see scary people walking down the street sometimes. Oh, yeah. And you're going to see houses that are being completely remodeled. And I like your idea about waiting on a percentage level and almost to the point where you're feeling like you might have missed the opportunity. And trust me, you haven't. I just got an email literally from somebody yesterday about an area in Denver called Highlands. And I bought houses there in the 20s, and he just told me his netting $300,000 from the house. So he's obviously selling it for a lot more than that. And there you go. That's another area. This wasn't the area I was talking about earlier, where you could buy whole blocks for 20. But yeah, I mean, gentrification is an incredible opportunity if you can find it. So avoiding risk, I guess we touched on it. Did we finish on that topic?
Sure. I mean, that's how I avoid risk.
Okay.
So,
all right.
well, I certainly know that we're nearer to the top of the market than the bottom. Yeah. So I am more careful. And that being said, in the last 6 weeks, I closed on a 24-unit building in Long Beach, which is an area that I've determined is gentrifying and it's a great value add. It's a dump of a 24 unit in an area that's totally accelerating.
Awesome. Yeah. And there are deals out there right now for sure. I just did a little YouTube video on should you buy in 2017, and
Yes.
And the whole barometer is cash flow. I mean, it really is. I mean, the bottom line is if the cash flow is there, you'll be fine. If you've got enough of a cushion to weather a contraction, you'll be fine. Even if you're not in a gentrifying area, as long as you're not competing with other A properties, there's a lot of overbuilding going on in the A class right now. But if you've got affordable housing and you've got a decent debt service coverage ratio, you're going to be just fine.
Yes.
So the next thing in your book here is viewing wealth negatively. And that's one thing I haven't talked about on the show. So I'm excited to hear your take on this.
Okay. I talk about it a lot, and I'm glad you're interested in it. I already think that your listeners have a pretty good leg up on it because they're interested in the multifamily piece. And I'll say it a couple of ways. And number one, I gave a keynote speech to a UCLA MBA entrepreneurship program, and the title of my speech was "How to Succeed Without Hard Work or Sacrifice." And when I first told the dean that, the dean, you have a little cocktail hour, and the dean said, "What are your remarks today?" And I told him that, he belly laughed, and then he looked at me and goes, "Oh, you're serious? Well, this is going to be interesting." And it's really, it's really it's a mindset piece. So we view, for starters, we view wealth as freedom. We view wealth as power. We view wealth as energy. It certainly is energy. So I have a devout Christian nephew who's devoting his life to service of others. And, a long time ago, because we've had this conversation, he said, "Well, hey, Uncle Paul, money isn't everything." I'm like, well, who said it was everything? And I got to tell you, the goals that you have, which is to have a positive impact in the world, are certainly much better served by you having wealth than not having wealth.
You can certainly have a bigger reach.
For sure. And then the hard work and sacrifice piece is just that if you do what you love, I don't believe it's hard work. So that's where we get another part of the book is Build a Life by Design. When I was working in a law firm, you could pay me $7,000 an hour. I'd go back at $7,000 an hour would be, for a few hours. That would be hard work for me. Now, analyzing property and driving around in the car, and I'm in my jeans and t-shirt and I have a cup of coffee and I talk to my best friend about which areas are great and which aren't and how are we going to change the building. I'm sorry, for me, that's fun.
That is a blast. And guys, yes. You've heard me say it a million times. If you don't love this business, try to associate pleasure with it whenever you're learning it. I've said it before, treat it like you're hunting for buried treasure because you are. Yes. But you've got to, if you don't love it, don't do it. Seriously, life is too friggin' short to not do what you love. And I mean, you got me excited when you're describing what you were doing and just relaxed. You got your cup of coffee, you're checking out the property, you're finding a phenomenal deal. And it gets my blood going, to think along those lines.
And, and so the parts of it that people may not like, which is, receiving the call in the middle of the night with the leaky roof. And this is why people don't invest in multifamily. Right. And I'm going to tell you, from the very beginning, I had no money and I had, 12 units. I did not take that call. I just
Thank you. Now I want to clarify something because I'm a big proponent for self-management, but I want to clarify what that means to Rod. Okay. What that means to Rod is I have people that handle the management for me, but they're on my staff. I don't hire a property management company. Now, for those of you listening, if you're going to take down a larger property and it's one of your first ones, I recommend hiring a property management company to learn the ropes. But, in your case, you've got a lot of other interests. You could hire a property management company right out of the get-go, and that may be your model. But I don't take calls from tenants. I haven't taken a call from a tenant since I was 18, almost 40 years. So.
And that's part of the mindset piece. Somebody was telling me about a mobile home park, and there's all sorts of ways to buy it and blah, blah, blah. And I talked to one of my wealthy partners about it, and he said, "Oh, I have relatives that own, the mobile home park. And you know what? If you own a mobile home park, you're now the mayor of a town in the middle of nowhere where you don't want to be the mayor." And so we have all these blocks. So it's
disagree completely, by the way.
Yeah.
We are actively looking at mobile home parks as well. It's really, you've got to set up a management infrastructure, be it, on site or off site. Across my office here, I've got a full-time property manager who's been with me a long time, had a management company forever. But either way, you can hire a property management company. You do not want to take the leaky faucet calls, maybe until you get to, 10 units, but even then you don't have to. So
yeah, you absolutely don't have to. And then the other piece is sacrifice. And sacrifice is, my definition of sacrifice is giving up something vital in order to have something else, and if we feel like we must sacrifice in order to have wealth, I can see why people choose not having wealth. So just design it in a way. And one of the things that I do, and I know you, like I said, I've watched enough of your stuff to know that we speak the same language. And one of the things I do is, I'll do affirmations and I'll do goals. And at the end of a big, giant, crazy goal, I just add with ease. So
I like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit
$100
million of net worth with ease. It just takes the sacrifice piece right off the table. Now my brain is looking for ways to do this that don't disrupt the way that I want to live my life.
I love that. No, I absolutely love that. That takes the pressure off. The goal is still there. You're still motivated. You've determined why that goal's a must, but you've took all the pressure off. Love that. Love that. So another one of your chapters in the book is about giving up, and I do want to hear your take on that, because so many people, they get their nose bloodied and they don't have a compelling vision for the future, or they don't have a strong enough why, and they give up. But I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, one of the things that we talk a lot about in the book, and it gets to the point where it seems trite, like get into action. The number one reason why people don't get in the game is they're afraid of making a mistake. And they're afraid of that fear of failure. And we know if you get in the game, the very worst thing that will happen is you learn a lesson,
A seminar. I call them seminars. I've had some big ones.
yes, for sure. And, if you keep your eyes open, one of the things that's in the book, we probably won't have time to get into it, is, building a business that builds wealth. And there's 7 pillars that you follow. One of them is modeling. And modeling is you find, you say, hey, I have a multifamily business. I've got 24 units. I'd really like to get to 240 units. One of the first things I do is run around and find people that have 240 units or more, and how do they do it? And what do they do? And you'd be really surprised these people would love to chat with you about it. They maybe not in your backyard because they'll feel like you're a competitor. Most likely they will, but all you have to do is go to a different geography.
Even in your own backyard sometimes, I tell you, most people that are successful, they love giving back. It's a basic human need to contribute to other people. It's underused in some, but I will tell you, if you ask from a good place and you try to add value back, people will help. And I couldn't agree more. Model success, and success leaves clues. Find people that have done what you that have done what you want to do, and model them. And couldn't agree more.
And I'll give you one script on it, just because I love to give the little things that people can use.
Awesome.
And what embodies that is the script that I use. If there's somebody that I really want to, so if I say, Rod, I've really looked at your podcast. You've had 1.5 million downloads. The amount of time that you have to have with coffee with random people, it just seems too great. But if I wanted to pick your brain on it, and I was in your area, I'd say, hey, Rod, I'm going to be in your hometown here. What would it take to earn the right to sit down with coffee with you?
Love that. Love that.
Every time I've asked it, it doesn't matter. And I've asked billionaires that question, and almost always they'll say yes. And almost always they'll say, well, you've already earned the right, or that's okay. And then I go the next step. I'll do a little research. I'll be like, okay, well, what do they really like? It doesn't matter. If it's Warren Buffett, it's cherry Coke. I've looked that up, So it can be a small thing, but it shows that you care and you're listening. And then I'd be very purposeful in the meeting, and I'd say, okay, hey, Rod, I know we only have 30 minutes. So I've thought really hard about this. I've got these 7 questions, and I can answer any questions you have for me, but here's what I've got for you, and just model it. So,
hey guys, if you didn't catch that, I mean, what he just gave you was absolute gold. And I'm telling, we will make sure it's in the show notes for you. That phraseology was absolutely perfect. How can I earn the right? I mean, that's just brilliant. And then taking a few minutes to investigate the person you're meeting with, and show them that you really did check them out, like you did, Paul. I mean, with me, and it's flattering, and it just creates a relationship instantly. It builds rapport instantly. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So we still got a little time, and I want to go through a couple of these other ones. You talk about holding on to toxic relationships, and
yes,
I know that all of us have those people. Sometimes they're in our family even, that can hold us back. That can, when we've got a dream. Those of you guys that are listening and that want to get into this business, and you've got a dream, and it's like a fragile thread. It's so easy for that to get broken. So I want to hear your take on toxic relationships.
Okay, so I'll talk about that in 2 directions. And one is, we can even talk about the positive direction, which we've touched on already. And I'll start by saying that I certainly have heard this elsewhere, and that is, your net worth is the average of your 5 closest friends. So the answer to that, now I want to increase my net worth, so I'm going to add some billionaires to that circle. So if it's my top 5, does that mean I have to kick off, 1 or 2? And what does that look like? And am I a crazy, selfish person? These are the things that go through people's minds. So
sure. One
of the things that I do is I make sure that I associate myself with people that are succeeding at a high level. And I can go on and on about that. I heard it in a very, very funny way, because I'm from Pittsburgh and LA, and I spend time in Texas. And somebody said, if you're in the barber shop long enough, you're going to end up with a haircut. And I think that was the first time I heard that. That's like the Texas version. I try to figure out, well, how am I going to turn that into like the Hollywood version? I was like, okay, well, if I don't have any tattoos, I don't have anything against it. But if you go on Sunset Strip and you spend all your time, if I spent all of my time in a tattoo parlor, I would end up with a tattoo. Nothing wrong with it, but I'm just saying it is who you spend your time with.
So back to the thing you were just saying about your fear of leaving people behind. What's your take on that?
Okay, so like I said before, on a goal with ease, I take and I used to drag a lot of negative people around me. I enjoyed, it did something for me to fix the problems.
Trying to bring them up.
Yeah, it gave me validation. Sure. You can call that, hey, well, he's just a nice guy. And I'm not giving away my charitable side at all. I'm just creating more awareness. So I had the one friend from my hometown that would call me and just dump all of his garbage in my yard. Hey, Paul. And then I was like, wait a minute. He says, hey, Paul, how are you? And so the more I get aware of it, he calls me, hey, Paul, how are you? But then doesn't even really wait for the answer. And then, then I'm like, whoa, right? It's like all the garbage comes out. Now I've known this guy for 40 years. So do I cut him out of my life completely? And my answer to that is no. No, I don't cut him out of my life completely, but I have awareness. And this is not, when I have that free time and I have that energy time and I have that growth time, when I have a great, I have a great idea. That's not the guy I share it with.
That's not the guy. And for me, it's my mom. I have a great idea. Oh, that sounds risky. That's scary, and I totally agree. Of course, you can't divorce yourself from them. You love them, you support them, but you don't allow them to influence you, right?
Sure. And influence you in that way. And when you talk about your mom, I totally get that. And I can tell you for sure, your mom does not want you to take that risk, not to keep you small. She wants you to not take that risk because she wants to protect you.
Of course. And that could be the same for your group of friends. They will hold on to you and they can prevent your growth if you allow them to, but they're not coming at you from a negative place. They're bringing their own bag of fears. And that's what's driving it, and their love of you, and they're afraid of loss. They're afraid of losing you. But the fact of the matter remains, you are the 5 people you hang around with the most, that you allow to influence you. So there you go.
We know that when that's very apparent to us when we want our kids, to have the right friends. And the right friends is not just the really nice friend. That's great. But you want them to have the friend that's doing something with their life. Because if your son or daughter has, their 5 closest friends are super nice, but they're not going anywhere, well, that's not what we're going to pick for them as a parent. So why would we pick that for ourselves? And for sure, no matter whether it's well-intentioned or not, I believe that if you hang out with 5 people that are not on a wealth building journey or not on a personal growth journey, it doesn't even have to be wealth building.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of my
they have to want more. It doesn't have to be money. It could be self-awareness. It could be, health. It could be any self-improvement.
Sure. Yeah. And you know what, you bring a great one up. And when I teach this live, I sort of draw an analogy to health. And I used to make the joke and it's actually true, when I'm on a diet, when I go on a diet, my girlfriend loses weight. And, and everybody laughs because she's way more fit than me anyway, but that's actually true. And the reason why is because, my influence is, I come home, I've had a hard day. I want to call my favorite Chinese takeout. The food's amazing. It's deep fried, sugar coated beef. It's like candy, right? And she'll eat it. I get it. She'll eat it. And then as soon as I'm on a diet, like, okay, we're not calling the Chinese takeout anymore. And she's like, okay, well, I was never calling it to begin with. And then we don't. And then we're eating what she would eat, and it's all healthy food. So she loses weight when I go on a diet. And that's really that really encapsulated for me, when you hang out with very successful people. And here's one of the tricks is a little thing you can do is just listen. Okay. So you hang out with a really successful person, just listen. And they will talk about setbacks, maybe. But if they talk about setbacks, it's about what they did to deal with the setback and how they moved through it. When you talk to people that haven't gotten where they want to get in their life, they're going to talk about setbacks like, oh, well, here are all the reasons why I couldn't do it. And they're and
they justify them and they look for justification. No, you're absolutely right. Scale up, play above your pay grade, because that will pull you into that pay grade.
Yes.
And I remember when I first got my real estate, I got my real estate license when I was 18, by the way, made the paper and everything, broker's license.
Wow.
Because you could do it through education back then in Denver, but I didn't make any money. And then I met this guy and he drove a Corvette and he was just so cool. And I just loved what he was doing. And I manifested the car, but the point of the matter is he pulled me up. And then the next guy in my journey pulled me up. And just by being around these people, they will pull you up. And so awesome. Okay. So I also want to talk about victimizing yourself. And I know that's another point in your book. Can you chat about that for a moment?
Sure. So I transitioned a lot of my thinking, actually. I was doing a lot of yoga, and my girlfriend is one of her side things is being a yoga instructor. And so I got a lot of great influence that way. One of the funny things is they teach you in yoga classes, the yoga teacher will teach you not to judge. Don't judge. Okay. And then what do you do if you catch yourself judging? Do you judge yourself for judging? Right. And so
that's a loop.
Right. That they couldn't get. My 12-year-old got me on that because I was trying to teach her,
that's awesome. She's brilliant. That's awesome. I was trying
to teach her well, it's not so important to be right. And then she was like, well, aren't you really trying to be right and teaching me how to, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh boy.
So I have a solution for that. And the solution is, rather than judge, notice. Okay. So if you take away the way to take away the judgment is I'm noticing that I'm judging. And then there's also a piece in the book where first thought, second thought. It's about dealing with these negative thoughts. So if you have victimizing yourself would be any negative self chatter that you have. It's just poison. It really is. And one of the things that I did I challenged.
Can I stop you there for 1 second? Because I really want to hammer that home. You guys, you really need to pay attention to your self-talk. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're going to air this episode with the driving force clip I just did on the power of words. And it ties right into what we're talking about here. Your words are so powerful. But you have to be aware of them. You have to consciously think, what am I saying to myself regularly? Think about it. Anyway, I just wanted to hammer that home for a second.
Absolutely. And I've also watched a piece of your video about where you talked about the most powerful words are, the most powerful statement is I am.
Right.
And what comes after that. And, I'm not a big meditator. I have a hard time sitting still. And my girlfriend taught me a mantra, and it was Sanskrit for I am that. And I am that, meaning I am the power. I am the creator. And that was the whole thing. So it goes thousands of years back, the I am, and then whatever happens. And you can say to yourself, I used to do it. I being ADD, I leave things different places. So, I could leave a computer. I've left a couple of Rolexes places. You don't want to be in my brain the moment I realize, I had a layover in Miami to go to the Bahamas. I left my Rolex. Let's be honest, right? What's going through my brain? And the first thing, no matter how much I had trained myself to that point, is like you are an idiot.
Right.
How can you do that? You don't deserve a Rolex. That's why, all that is right. So sometimes we cannot prevent the flood of negative that comes into our brain, but that's the first thought. And it's really an Alcoholics Anonymous thing. And that is the second thought. So it would be the first thought is you run into some trouble and you're like, I want to drink. And they say, hey, don't beat yourself up for that. That's natural. But then what's next is second thought. And that you have control over. So the second thought I would say is just notice. You go, wow, I'm noticing that I'm so angry with myself that, I'm saying all these bad things. And then as soon as you do that, then you can start moving into, I'd move into action. I'm like, how do I get the Rolex back? And that by the way, was unsuccessful.
Oh, no, geez, ouch.
That's okay. And then,
But I want to hammer that point home as well. Because guys, if you just notice, like he just described, awareness is the first step. And that's probably the most important step. And that makes you aware. Okay. And if you get in the habit of being aware, you can start mitigating. And the only way to start mitigating is to be aware. So I just want to hammer that home. Just that noticing is such an important piece. That's a great way to position it.
Yes. And so, you talked about, we have at least one mutual friend in common. That's Pat Highban.
Oh yeah.
Pat Highban is very good friends with my co-author, David Osborne. I was spending time with them, and those two are like brothers. They've been friends for so long, and I'm the youngest of five. I'm good at it too. And they'll chip at each other like two brothers, teasing each other about stuff. To the degree, the harder you can do it to the next guy, it's almost like an intelligence. It's like a comic intelligence. And I get that. And I would engage in it myself, but as an outsider and watching that, I said to David, I watch you and Pat and you guys tear each other apart. I wonder if it's fun and it's not harmful, go for it. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, do you think it's useful? And then he's like, and then they went on a long car ride or hike or whatever. And I think they talked about it for a couple of hours. So it's just the awareness.
Wow.
It doesn't have to be a rule, but again, the victimizing yourself. And one thing that I've really watched is people who, again, it's sort of an adage, hurt people, right? We know that. And that doesn't, in my mind, give you an excuse to hurt people. But I will tell you, generally what I find, honestly, is I have an ability now at 52 to be very light with people. So, if somebody does me wrong, I can brush it off easily. When somebody cuts in front of me in the car, I go, oh, that's okay. And the gateway for me to be able to be light with other people is to be light with myself. And I know that people who are mean and tough are mean and tough with themselves.
Oh, wow. Huge.
Yeah.
What you just said is huge. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very insightful.
If you want to be lighter with your kids and you want to be lighter with your family, you want to be lighter with your friends, you want to lose your temper less, you are angry. Trust me. I don't care what a friend, you have a wonderful friend that does some awful thing to you and you're furious. You are angry with yourself. It just is.
Yeah.
And if you look at that and you go, well, why am I so angry about this thing? You choose what you're angry about too.
And pay attention to the words that you use. In fact, that'll probably be in the episode that airs with this one. And that is, there's a big difference between I'm furious and I'm peeved or I'm annoyed,
Yes.
it's a total different world in the phraseology you use to describe how you feel. Very, very important as well.
And thank you. Hey, Rod, thank you for saying that, because there's one other sort of tip that I can give that I would just love to give to your listeners. I almost forgot when you just said that, it reminded me. And that is, I replace a word, and whatever bad choice it was, or whatever bad action a friend does to me, right? Or whatever thing I did, whatever decision I did, boy, that was the dumbest decision, right? All you have to do is use the word interesting.
Interesting. Love
Interesting. So
that was interesting. Yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Yes.
And I've talked to people that talk about 2008 and they say they were destroyed. Just say, okay, that was interesting. Love it.
That was interesting. And it's all the fun thing about it is it's always true. So one of the things I have a hard time saying, I have a hard time lying to myself. If I'm super nervous about something, one of the things I do is I say, I'm not nervous. And it actually helps. It really does. But I try to stay away from that and move toward things like replacing with interesting. And interesting is always true. It always resonates with me. So no matter how bad the decision was that I made, when I look back, that's an interesting decision. No matter how bad the injustice somebody does to you, wow, that's an interesting choice.
And it totally diffuses it. It totally takes all the negative energy out of it. I love it. The last one that I want to have you chat with briefly, because we're running low on time here, is thinking you know it all. Can you just expand on that piece
yes.
of the wealth strategy? There's
so much to it. I could explain it in so many different ways. Sam Freshman is a friend of mine. He's a huge real estate syndicator in LA. He's 83 years old. We're talking about writing a book together.
Cool.
And when he was out of the office, young folks, younger than me, way younger than him, said, Sam comes in the office every day like it's his first day in school. And, that energy. And I was like, wow, because I'd already been thinking about this a lot. And, when I did yoga, you go in, they got little things on the wall. And one of the 8 pillars of yoga, and I don't remember anyone but this one, I don't think, is have a beginner come to the class with a beginner's mind. And so that means, well, I look at that and go, well, I'm a beginner. That's easy to do. But if you've been doing it for 20 years every day and you're an expert, come to the class with a beginner's mind. And what that allows is further growth. And growing is growing, one step, it's a self-awareness thing. One step is allowing yourself not to know everything, and allowing yourself, you can learn something from everyone. Yes. And almost it ties into it, but it goes back to the thing when we were talking about modeling and asking somebody for help that you think wouldn't want to help, maybe. And you said you find that people really do want to contribute. One of the things it's sort of weird and cool is that giving and receiving are simultaneous. So therefore, it's impossible for me my intention is to give great value to your listeners and to the people watching the podcast.
And you have.
Yeah. And I know that whatever else it is, and you asked me, well, is there anything, which is a great thing. It was almost like, how would I earn the right? You said to me, what can we contribute to you today? And I had to think for a minute, because I came on with the intention of I'm going to give to everybody. I know I'm getting back.
Right.
Even if it's not the, somebody will hear this and I'll come up with some great deal, or the unintended consequences, which are always good. Just giving alone is receiving.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Incredible insights, Paul. You've added a tremendous amount of value. If you guys are interested in his book, it's on Amazon. You've also got a website for it as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the book is Wealth Can't Wait. My co-author is David Osborne and Paul Morris. I'm Paul Morris. And we have a website, Wealth Can't Wait. And also you can find me at Morris, which is my last name, morrisx.com. So you could email me, Paul at morrisx, or just go to morrisx and you'll see more about links. I'll put a link to this podcast, and
Awesome.
we'll get you some more traffic for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and thank you for the tremendous value you've added, and I've really enjoyed this a lot. And let's stay in touch, my friend.
Yes, and I can tell you, I've done a bunch of these, and this has been really at the very top. I had the feeling it would be from watching you, and it's been that and more. And I really appreciate it. Your listeners are lucky to have you, and it'll go to 15 million from 1.5.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, buddy. All right, take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.